Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the main event.
Let's go.
Round one, fight.
Thank you for tuning in to the Crypto Street Podcast. Here are your hosts, Killer Whale, Prince, and Crypto Dale.
And remember to tip your waitress.
Hey, everybody. Welcome. Crypto Street Podcast. This is Crypto Dale. As always, back at home. I'm not at the hotel life in the Bush-like capital of Iowa. As always, I'm joined by my two comrades. I got my main man out in Cali, Killer Whale. What's good?
Hello, good sir. How are you guys doing today?
Doing pretty well. How about yourself?
Doing well. We had a rainy day here in LA. We got to get our weather or our daily weather forecast in. I think we're due for some rain the rest of the weekend, but sunshine and 70 degrees next week, I believe, according to the weather report. So looking forward to that. It's going to feel like California again. That's
beautiful. We've got pretty much all the snow here in my part of the neck of the woods is melted off of the ground, which is great. We're going to be in the 50s and touching the 60s here next week. And now we got to go live to who everyone wants to know the current state of weather up in Canada land. Prince, homie.
Hey. Yeah, it's not too bad, actually. Sun's out. Weather's
guns
changing
out?
a little bit. Sun's out, guns out. So that's pretty good. And, you know, the markets, they're not looking too bad right now.
Yeah,
Things are
they
playing
are.
out nicely. So
They're looking pretty juicy. I saw Godson said that if alt season is not started by next week, he is deleting his Twitter, which
wow.
part of me thinks he almost wants to delete his Twitter.
I'll be sad to see him go.
I think he's maybe putting some juju out there, like hoping that if he puts it out into the universe, it'll actually come to fruition, which I hope it does.
I think so too. I don't necessarily know if it's alt season or not, but we can always hope and pray, I guess.
Everybody wants it to be alt season, even if it's not alt season. So
yeah, I put that tweet out there earlier that said yesterday, I think it was, that said everyone wants alt season so bad that I really don't think alt season is going to happen.
Yeah.
Which, whatever. So going off the cuff a little bit today, we've got, a well-known person, not an anonymous Twitter like we normally have. Today's guest is Howard Marks. He's the CEO of Start Engine, is co-founder of Activision and Blizzard. Howard, thank you very much for joining, taking time out of your schedule.
It's my pleasure, guys.
Why don't we start off with kind of giving a high-level overview of yourself and Start Engine and the things that you've got going for you?
Sure. I've been an entrepreneur for 35 years, so I'm dating myself. But that's okay. I know, there's room for everybody, right? And I started, my first company was in college at the University of Michigan. And then I got lucky because me and my partner were looking for something really extraordinary to do. And we saw the video game industry as a great opportunity and got involved and basically bought Activision out of bankruptcy and really took control of the company and rebuilt it into a Fortune 500 company. It's the largest video game company in the world. And that was an incredible journey. It doesn't happen often for entrepreneurs, but when it does, I can say there's luck involved. There's also some timing, and there's also real guts and real perseverance and grit to get there. And that says for a lot of your listeners who have great ambitions as well, it can be done and it should be done because that's how entrepreneurs become successful. Anyway, moving forward, I then bought another company out of bankruptcy called Acclaim Games. So you probably are familiar with Mortal Kombat and NBA Jam and rebuilt it, sold it it ended up being owned by the Walt Disney Company. And I pondered for a little bit, and that was in 2011. And I said, I want to help LA become a tech city because I love Los Angeles. I love living here. I think it's a great city. It just didn't have its place on the map when it comes to technology. So I started an accelerator called Start Engine and immediately got thousands of applications, people who wanted to join it and get our investment dollars. And, it's great because we were the first accelerator in Los Angeles when Silicon Valley had tons of them at that point. Most of the companies I invested in, there were about 60 of them over 3 years. So 20 companies a year went out of business very quickly. We invested our money. They couldn't raise money from other people. Why? Maybe their gender, their idea, the bias level from traditional investors was pretty high. The VCs love to invest in white males from Stanford, but that's not necessarily everybody I had on my team. They were people from all walks of lives, and they had one common goal, which is to build a business, and they couldn't raise money. But sometimes the stars do align, and the Jobs Act was voted in April 2012 and signed by Obama at that time. He was the president. And it was one of those few things that Congress all agreed to, which is not controversial. And that's why it never got any press, because really everybody wanted to vote for it. And what it did, for the first time in 80 years, an ordinary person, Main Street person, can invest in those exciting startups that you hear about in Silicon Valley. And I said to myself, this is very, very big. And it went into law, and I decided, okay, you know what? I'm going to rename, it's the same start engine, but I want to make it a platform for what you call crowdfunding. Now, I know crowdfunding is not a very sexy word, and it's a little boring maybe, but it was a way for companies to raise money. And again, you're talking now, we're going to 2015 now. And at that time, 2015, the world of crypto was alive, but the ICO was not really a big deal. And the idea that raising money with an ICO was not established yet. And so I was going along our way, and I raised money for 10 companies in 2016. Not many, frankly. I was a little disappointed. And in 2017, 100 companies. And this year, we're going to raise money for 300 to 400 companies. So that's getting exciting. And our mission is simple. Our mission is to help entrepreneurs achieve their dreams. That's it. That's all we care about. We want to help the entrepreneur who, in a way, is going to be the job creator for our country and create those really great jobs that people are looking for. And we want to be part of that story. However, last summer, I was traveling with my family in Scandinavia. We're on a cruise, and I read an article about the Security Exchange Commission talking about this thing called DAO, which was an ICO that came out successfully and then was hacked, and there was some controversy around it. And I frankly tell you, I didn't really know about it. I knew what Bitcoin was, I knew what crypto was, but I didn't know there was this concept of this initial coin offering where you could raise money. They called it a crowd sale. I call my business crowdfunding, crowd sale. It sounds the same thing. What's the difference? The one difference is one, you use dollars, credit cards, wires, and the other one, you use crypto. So it could be Bitcoin, Ether, Litecoin, whatever the company is willing to accept. And then I looked at it further, and I wanted to study it. So I started looking at all the popular ICOs that were being raised and the ones who finished, the ones who were in the middle, and I got involved. And what I realized was, this is amazing. Why is it amazing? Because it's a new marketplace that didn't exist before, that you have tens of thousands of people who want to invest. They want to be in on the ground floor of something great. And they want to also be able to take those coins and trade them. And in a way, this is a marketplace. And I decided I want to be involved.
So let's compare Start Engine to, I guess, one of the more well-known accelerators, Y Combinator, which is based out of Silicon Valley. It's a big VC kind of startup that helps companies get off the ground. How would you say you're similar or different to something like that?
Well, initially, when I was an accelerator, I based my company based on Y Combinator. They were the leader. I believed they were doing it the right way. And I felt very strongly that I should take some of the practices they have, the ideas they have, and implement it at Start Engine. And I did just that. The only difference was I was in Los Angeles and they were in Silicon Valley.
Okay, yeah, it's totally true because LA, I mean, it has this sort of Hollywood identity, but it's never really been a tech hub. So I'm happy to hear that. It's a good thing to hear. You know, obviously I live in LA too. And I think that's very important because tech is the future and we can see what it's done to a place like San Francisco. So how has that experience been for you so far in terms of trying to kind of get your roots here and kind of get that off the ground in LA? How receptive has the city been to that?
Well, I got lucky. The mayor put me on his technology council. I was awarded an award 3 years ago, Treasure of LA, where people recognized the work I did for Los Angeles. So I think it's been very positive. Some of my investments, as I told you, most went out of business. I would say 90% or close to that are doing great. They've raised tens of millions of dollars, and I'm happy to say that I made a difference. And there are some great companies in LA because I got involved with them early. But my frustration was not because of LA. Look, frankly, LA does not have a lot of venture capital money here. When you want to look for money, if you're a company, a tech company, you go up to San Francisco or you go to Sand Hill Road and you just do your pilgrimage there and you beg for money and you say, hey, I'm from LA. So they say, okay, well, I'll invest, but I want half the valuation that we're paying here in San Francisco. And that frustrated me because I felt that they treated us like we were not at the same level they were. And yet LA created the most important monetization inventions of the entire internet. And that is AdWords and AdSense. AdWords was patented here in Los Angeles by Bill Gross at Idealab. And it was part of GoTo.com that got sold to Yahoo for $1.8 billion or something. And then AdSense, Gil Elbaz, also a Caltech grad, created it. It was sold to Google. And so, yeah, they can treat us like we were not as valuable as they were over there. But think about this. Without these two inventions, that's the entire economy of the internet. I mean, not all of it, but a big portion of it.
Big.
And Los Angeles, as you know, is a tech hub, but a different kind of tech hub. You have SpaceX. The first telecommunications satellite was here, invented here and done here. The email was invented at UCLA. Broadcom was started from UCLA. I mean, so it's not, and now Activision, a very large company. Look, it's not that LA it's lesser than San Francisco. We have a more diverse workforce, diverse economy. Hollywood's one of the economies, but most people don't know that LA is the largest city for manufacturing clothing. So that diversity brings us really to what we're here to talk about, which is crypto, because crypto is diversity. Mm-hmm. People in crypto are not the white males from Stanford necessarily. They're from all walks of life, genders, identity. And that's a revolution in itself that really excites me. And that's why I see a great future for it.
So talk a little bit about the concept of ICO 2.0, which I know you've talked about on Medium. For all the listeners, Howard is a very active writer on Medium, so check that out. Talk about that ICO 2.0 concept and how that relates to securities laws and how ICOs are kind of dancing around that sort of stuff, perhaps.
Yeah, I don't want to bore people with legalese because I think they're seriously probably tired of hearing how the government wants to do all sorts of things to the crypto business. But let's put things in real context. ICO 2.0 is very simple. My goal when I was, saying I'm going to get involved, right? I said that because I read about it. I studied a lot of the ICOs and I felt that I had something to add to the story. And what I had to add to the story was simple. I want to bring ICOs out of the shadows. Now, why would I say that? And it's very simple. Look, the fact that people want to invest in new ideas like ICOs, groundbreaking companies that could be the next Uber, is a great thing. However, we live in a country of rules. We all get to vote, which is a great privilege we own. And I hope everybody who's listening does vote because we should be proud to be in a country that votes. However, we're a country that votes, that has a government that is voted in, and they make rules. And those rules are important. Now, when new technology comes out, like blockchain technology, cryptocurrencies, how does it live among all the rules? And so my hat off to 1.0, because these are the I would say pioneers of the blockchain, the ones who were first out there willing to risk their life savings, risk their careers to build something extraordinary, which ended up being what we see today. So I have only good things to say about 1.0, but I think it is time to be realistic among all of ourselves. And that's where I come in, is to say, look, we bring it out of the shadows. because the government, the rules, the Security Exchange Commission, the laws are not going to allow this marketplace to continue to thrive. I want it to be 10 times what it is today. That means you look at coin market cap and you see, $300 billion. I want it 3 trillion. I think everybody here around the table wants it to 3 trillion. But how do we get there? And doing it by saying, oh, well, I'm going to make an ICO and not sell it to American citizens, and I'm going to go to the Cayman Islands, or I'm going to go to Singapore, and I'm not going to allow Americans involved. And if I do, only rich people. And the whole same narrative you've heard your whole lives is coming in front of you, which is, democratization of capital. The idea that money is going to be among all of us in our own control is coming back to the same story, which is the rich gets richer and they only get to have access to the right deals. And that's what's happening with the ICO right now. You may have heard recently that the Security Exchange Commission sent subpoenas to a ton of companies. And that, in a way, scared a lot of people. And you probably hear that among a lot of people you talk to. But it shouldn't scare people, because in the end of the day, if we all get together and say, look, let's use the Jobs Act, which was really created in a way by sheer luck, perfect for the crypto industry. That's ICO 2.0. You use the Jobs Act, and it's cheaper than not using it, meaning you can raise money and cheaper than if you use the good old law firm who's going to spend a ton of money trying to justify something that is not, which is the utility token. And it's cheaper and it's better. And by the way, it's better for the investor because they can make an informed decision.
Mm-hmm. So in a big thing, like I think even you mentioned it here, it's becoming it's not fair anymore almost. And I've seen the change. It's been so rapid in the ICO landscape. 3-4 months ago, you could get into an ICO. You didn't need to have any KYC. The private sale data, it was very transparent. If there even was a private sale, now we're seeing ICOs that are, telling people they're going to do public sales. Then they scrap the public sale just because, there's so much of this a gray area in a sense for a lot of these people doing these. And it turns into, okay, now it's just public money or private money getting in. And, the little guys don't really got a chance. So I guess with the Start Engine now, how do you guys approach that? Is there the same kind of degree with the private sales and I guess transparency? How do you guys approach that?
Here's some good news for you. And I hear I can feel what you're saying. The good news is very simple. With the Jobs Act, you can actually do a crowd sale. No problem. And sell it to anyone. Doesn't have to be wealthy. Doesn't have to be someone who's sophisticated. It could be the Main Street person. The average Joe has access. And how does it do it? There are 2 regulations, and I'll use a little bit of lingo here. One is called regulation crowdfunding. You can raise up to $1 million a year from the average person. And you can do it also in conjunction with a private sale if you wanted to do that. So introduce yourself to the rich people, but also get the Main Street people, your community, people who care about you really.
Yeah.
And then, so there's a limit of $1 million a year. That's for some people a little too, I would say, limiting. The other one is Regulation A+. It's the gold standard. You can raise up to 50 million, 50 per year from the ordinary person. So you could actually, if you say, look, I want to raise 100 million, go to the wealthy people and raise 50, and then go 50 to the people who care most about you, the Main Street investors, the community. Mm-hmm. So putting it together, you can. Now, there's a few things you have to give up. It's not, it's not like I'm saying, oh, it's so easy, let's do it, and there are no downsides. There's always a downside to everything. There's a downside to doing an ICO with people who are, the general crowd, and then it's a scam and they lose all their money. There's a downside for you, right? I'm not suggesting we can avoid all the scams, but what I'm suggesting is because it's regulated and the SEC has oversight, it's better. Mm-hmm. So, look, people may complain and say, I don't like the SEC, but when they lose their money, and the SEC can get it back to them, I think they probably will warm up to the SEC. Think about this. The SEC has 3 mandates, and they're great. Here's the 3 mandates, so everybody understands. Protecting investors. Secondly, helping small companies raise capital and creating orderly, fair marketplaces. So none of this, what I told you, is nefarious or trying to impede on our liberties. Because liberty is great as long as everybody's playing by the same rules. But the minute someone comes in and says, look, you know what? I'm going to scam you guys. Well, that's an affront to our liberty. So in a way, what I'm saying was these 2 regulations, you can do a real crowd sale that is honest, that is in conjunction with a private one. If that's what you want to do, it's amazing. And you know what? We've been doing it since the beginning. We're experts at that. And we love talking to companies who want to raise money. But my main concern is I don't want entrepreneurs to get caught in securities fraud, in things that ruins their careers.
Yeah, I think taxes are kind of the elephant in the room when it comes to crypto. We had a tax expert on the show about a week ago, who it was a very good, very knowledgeable episode. I think everybody learned a lot, but we had so many people contacting us on Twitter saying like, I wish I never listened to that, or like, I'm so depressed after listening to that, because people are realizing that you do technically have to pay taxes on a lot of this stuff. And if you look at where ICOs were, let's say a year ago, where all you needed was an email address and maybe an Ethereum address to send from, or a Bitcoin address to send from, and then you could participate in an ICO and get your tokens and be largely off the grid. But again, it's this sort of thing that you mentioned in the past where regulation is sort of a necessary, I guess, quote unquote, evil, legitimatize an industry. And crypto is still so small if you look at the total market cap. It feels big to some people who have been in it for some time, just because we've seen it grow from absolutely tiny to just kind of tiny. But it's still something that we need for it to really be a big global asset class that institutions are really interested in investing in. So I think this sort of thing is necessary, even though some people probably won't like it.
Well, look, I'm not here to talk about taxes, but I can tell you one thing that's kind of interesting is that companies who raise money through ICO and they claimed it was a utility token were actually selling revenue. And that's taxed. It used to be last year 48%. Now it's 21%. So in order to avoid that, they would go to the Cayman Islands and set up the company there and do the sale out of the Cayman Islands. But what they don't realize is that, look, people are not really dumb. The blockchain, the superpower of blockchain is all the records are there and immutable. There's nothing better for a prosecutor once they figure out what address is whose. They have all the stuff. I mean, talk about like discovery. Discover what? It's right there. Well, how do we know it's real? Well, it's the blockchain. It is real. Okay, so you know what, guys? It's not lost on anyone that, yes, the blockchain, cryptocurrency is an extraordinary innovation. It brings the Main Street person into a financial opportunity they never had before. If you think, look, the whole financial marketplace today, as you know it, is not for the really Main Street person. And now we have an opportunity to be that. And we got lucky because the Jobs Act is anti-establishments. Imagine this. I'm JP Morgan, I'm Wells Fargo, and I see the Jobs Act coming into Congress that says, oh, you know what? You don't need a broker to raise money. You don't need financial institutions to do that. You don't need all these wealthy big bankers. You just need to go put up a website and raise money. That's so anti-institution, right? And it was given to us. It's a gift that keeps giving. And I want your audience to understand that without the Jobs Act, I would have never been involved. I wouldn't be here talking to you. Mm-hmm. I'm here because I sincerely believe the Jobs Act was perfectly done for the whole crypto blockchain economy. It is going to usher something that all the other countries in the world do not have, which is legally doing legal crowd sales to ordinary people blessed by the laws of the country. That I can assure you, because I've studied the laws in many countries, they do not have that. we do, we should take advantage of it.
Can we touch a little bit on the concept of a utility token? Because I find this kind of funny where this term came out for a while, or I think it was like maybe 6 or 8 months back, where the term utility token got pretty popular. And a lot of ICOs were going, hey, we don't have to register as a security. We're a utility token. It's like some special thing where they're just exempt, because you have to use the token for something. And I see this online on message boards where, participants of certain projects will be like, we're not going to be investigated by the SEC. We're a utility token. And I'm like, you can't just say you're a utility token and then the SEC is going to be like, oh, yeah, totally. Yep, you're right. It doesn't work like that because they make the distinction at the end of the day. And a lot of these things are, let's be honest, securities disguised as utility tokens, kind of looking for a purpose. So maybe talk about some examples of that you've seen in the crypto space and how that's affecting regulations going forward.
So obviously, as you know, I'm not a lawyer. I don't make the rules. I am not a lobbyist and I'm not a regulator, as you know. I'm just an engineer that is an entrepreneur building businesses like most of your listeners who are enterprising like this, who want to be successful by having the opportunity to build a business. This is what the whole blockchain economy is about. Okay, well, I looked at, for example, Tezos. And the reason I looked at Tezos is because it got popular because it raised $200+ million. It was really an extraordinary thing to watch, probably one of the first blockchain projects without a cap sale where they could raise as much as they wanted. And then they went public touting it, and their founders went on every podcast and they were so happy and excited. And then I studied it. I wrote an article about it. I said, look, hold on a second, guys. They set up a foundation. That's great. And the foundation's purpose is to do good in the world. And I love it. And then the foundation supposedly was raising the money for Tezos. And the foundation was going to pay the founders of Tezos 8% of the proceeds. So if they raise $200 million, they'll get $60 million payday. And I said, well, hold on a second. That doesn't make sense because first, receiving a commission, you need to be a broker. You need to be registered with the SEC. You can't just be an ordinary person and just say, I want 8% of a financial raise because that's not supervised. And then they said, okay, they get 10% of all the tokens. So it was a payout. And I thought, wow, that doesn't fit the model. And then I wrote about the whole governance system, which is, a foundation is not a company. So there are no shareholders. And how do you govern it? What happens if you want to fire the CEO? Well, guess what happened? It turns out that Johan Goevers, the trustee head of the foundation, decided he didn't like what was going on anymore and decided not to pay anything. And that created a delay because there was no more money for Tezos to build its own the DLS, the company who owned the IP, to build it. And then started the lawsuits, the class action suits, securities frauds, and all sorts of things. And those two young founders who are probably very bright and very capable, I don't know who told them to do this. They looked at Ethereum, so they guessed, Ethereum was also a foundation in Zug, which is a little city in Switzerland. Oh, let me do the same. And then, you know what? Why don't I take a commission? Okay, great. Let's take a commission. And it's like everybody slapping themselves on the back. Very bad. First of all, greed tends to corrupt people, by the way. Yeah. It's not necessarily the best thing ever. So anyway, you're now here in a situation where it's a big mess. They had to pay out this guy, Johan Goevers, left by taking a humongous amount of money, basically all of the investors' money, by the way. And they now have control and they're going to go and pay themselves that money. But there's a difference now, is that now everybody knows what happened. There's a lot of articles about it. And now, guess what? They're going to also get their paperwork from the SEC.
So Johan, I know it was said that, obviously I think he probably took some kind of cut to leave the project. Was that ever disclosed publicly? Because I've been following Tezos really closely. And the whole thing is fascinating just in terms of, how much of a mess it's been. And just the whole Switzerland thing where, do you know anything about, does being in Switzerland with a Swiss foundation, does that actually exempt these projects or companies from drawing the ire of the SEC? I know it's probably a tough question, but can you shed any insight on that?
Well, I'll answer you the question right away. It turns out in securities laws, the law of the country of where the investor lives is the law that applies. So guess what? You can do anyone sue Switzerland all day long. It's not going to help. It's not going to help. And don't forget, foundations are private entities. They're not for profit. So we don't know how much Johan got, but I can assure you it was not $10. And he left with a boatload of money. And you know what? It's sad. And then now Switzerland announced that they're going to review this whole foundation system, because I have to tell you, the people who initially invented cryptocurrencies were the Swiss. Now you're going to look at me and say, Howard, you have no idea what you're talking about. No, I do. It's called secrecy, bank secrecy. Switzerland was very famous for a long time for a place that you could open a bank account with just a number and a password. They didn't need to know who you were, identity, nothing. You could put in $100 million from, let's say you are head of a state in Africa and you had a couple $100 million floating around. You didn't know what to do with. So you go to Switzerland, you put it under a secret bank account. Okay, I don't know if you heard of that. Guess what? That's gone. You know why? Because the U.S. Congress, actually probably was the U.S. Senate initially who did it, realized that a lot of Americans had bank accounts in Switzerland that were undeclared. That's tax dodgers. So they went to Switzerland and said, look, we'll make a deal with you guys. Here's the deal. Fine, don't disclose us who these people are, but you'll never do business in America again. So you can tell UBS, Credit Suisse, all those guys to pack it up and leave our country. Guess what happened next? Switzerland gave the government all the records. Okay? So cryptocurrency, in a way, is not new in concept, but now it's new because it's a software product. So now you got Tezos, a big mess, and then I studied a few other ones, and it's unbelievable. I studied Munchie. They didn't raise much money, by the way, but they were very visible because they were Silicon Valley with advisors who are top attorneys in the country. In fact, one was a former regulator. These are the best of Silicon Valley, building an incredible idea, which is Munchie. Let's replace Yelp. Let's get rid of Yelp and let's make it on the blockchain. And they did their ICO, right? Now, the reason I bring this one up is they didn't raise a lot of money. I think they were trying to raise 15 million and they raised a lot less than that. So you could call it a failed raise. But the SEC called them up and said this, guys, if you give all the money back, we're not going to prosecute. So next thing you know, they give all the money back and they don't get prosecuted. And everybody's looking around and say, wow, this is the greatest thing ever. So you can do this deal, do an ICO, and if ever that you get caught, you just give the money back and you're okay. That's called a rescission or disgorgement. In this case, it's a disgorgement. You disgorge all the money back to the investors. Well, I think the SEC was trying to be nice and trying to be thoughtful, which is good. But no one listened. No one cared. And the music continued. The dance party was not over. Let me tell you. December was the highest amount of raised by ICOs by far of the entire year. Imagine this. And Munchie's thing, I think, happened in November. So no one listened. So guess what? Now we're in 2018. And it's really a mess. But the good news is that the transition can happen if everybody gets together. And that's what I'm doing with my conference on April 20th in Santa Monica. And I invite everyone to come and register. It's all about bringing everybody together to talk about this and say, hey, how do we make ICOs and exchanges work under regulation and do it in a way that is thoughtful, that works with what exists in terms of the laws? Because there's no confusion, guys. Everybody talks about, oh, the laws are confusing. They're not confusing. They're confusing if you don't want to follow them. They're not confusing if you want to follow them. Okay, so that's why I'm doing the summit, because it's leadership. I want badly the industry to get together and decide, yes, we're going to go in this direction, and everybody does it. And guess what happens next? Thrive. everything is going to start again in a big way. And you know what? The ordinary investor is going to win. Why? Because now when they want to make an investment in an ICO, they have the financials. Right now, when you look at the white papers, there are no financials. And what if there was a bad actor? A bad actor, someone who's committed securities fraud in the past 10 years? What if they were in the company or controlling the company? You don't know. You need to know. So making an informed decision is a good idea.
Absolutely.
So that's why I think you'll see my pitch is we believe that there is a path forward that is actually better.
So Munchie, I know you mentioned happened in November. I know a lot of ICOs, like Tezos is one example, happened prior to that. Because of sort of perhaps maybe some vagueness around the laws, do you think there will be any leniency or forgiveness for a lot of these ICOs that took place before there was really, the SEC coming down hard on some of them? Do you think they have any sort of gray area excuse? I
truly believe that the SEC is very thoughtful about it. And, let's look at Ethereum as an example. Ethereum was an ICO. If any of your listeners or you were lucky enough to invest in it, it's been an incredible return. And it's an investment. But truthfully, you could say at that time, it was the Wild West. And hopefully the regulators will recognize that. And they will say, look, once we published the DAO bulletin, we made it very clear. And they even said they're going to not prosecute the DAO. So they did what you just suggested. And they may do it for everybody behind them, saying, look, you know what? Look, we're not here to destroy the industry, but listen, we told you very clearly in multiple bulletins that this is not going to work. And you just disregarded us, or you tried to fake leave the country. That's not going to work. So in a way, I think your interest in that, I think yes, I think there will be a little bit of that. Hopefully more than not. But again, I'm here to say that, the past is the past. The future is what we can control together. I don't know we can change the past. We can plead for mercy, fine, great. But we can change the future together.
So I guess, Howard, is there anything else that you wanted to touch on? Anything else you wanted to talk about? I know we touched on the summit and Start Engine. Just any other thoughts on crypto or the space that you kind of want to leave with the audience?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that if you look at someone like myself, I'm 55 years old. I've seen in my life some amazing events. I was part of the .com boom. I was there when it happened. I got lucky that my company Activision was got hit hard, but did thrive at the end. And I was there when the personal computer got started. That was the early Apples. And then I was there when the internet started in the mid 90s. I remember one of our guys at Activision had this internet access that was before the browser, and he was typing all these commands. I was like, what is that? And then I'm here with the crypto. And I think the crypto is as important or not more important than the invention of the internet, because the crypto can truly change a lot of things that exist in our world, and including the disparity that exists. The idea that the ordinary person can invest and hold their own currencies in their hands is great. I just want your listeners to understand that regulation is not here to destroy and put this all away in a grand conspiracy. Yeah, absolutely not. In fact, if anything, they're here to do exactly what their mandate is, to protect investors, to help blockchain companies raise capital, and to help the marketplace be fair and orderly. And if you can take anything from this conversation, is understand that this is good because it's going to allow us to get from where we are to 1.0. Let's call it the $300 billion marketplace to $1 trillion+.
Hey, Howard, on a timeline comparison, real quick, with crypto to the .com, say 1 being the conception, 10 being present day with the .com, where do you feel that crypto is at?
I think it's quite early. Okay. So if you look at the .com boom, which everybody talks about, so what happened is The dot-com started around mid-1990s. So it took about 5 years to get to a bubble that was so huge. It was $7 trillion, okay? $7 trillion. And exploded. And the NASDAQ went from 5,000 to 2,500, okay? That's pretty dramatic, half the marketplace. And not every company was crypto, it was a .com at that time. It just cut everything down. And then it recovered. Look at the top 10 companies today. You got Amazon, Google, you got Facebook. The top 10 companies in the world are mostly internet people, right? I believe in the next 20 years or less, it would be crypto companies too, who are going to dominate our industry. And that's why I think all of you and all of your listeners are part of this community and need to embrace it and move on with the ways and hopefully the new ways. And I hope that people are not too disappointed, because it is going to be a bigger marketplace, because it will be more trustworthy. And because the regulators are going to help the industry, the institutional and all the people you talked about are going to come in.
That's good to hear. I think it just kind of confirms a lot of people are, with the bubble popping for crypto, a lot of people are saying that this is still pretty early, and hearing it from someone that has seen maybe both sides of the story that not a lot of people in this space have seen. Been around for the .com. It's a lot of younger folks, not us mature folks like you and myself, Howard. So again, we just want to thank you very much for taking the time. And for all the gamers out there, Activision is the company behind like Call of Duty, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, and how about Blizzard? I was addicted to World of Warcraft for like a good 4 years during my high school days. Really good game.
Vitalik Buterin credits World of Warcraft as his inspiration for Ethereum.
Oh,
that's on record. You can check it out.
I knew I shouldn't have listened to my dad when he stopped me from playing it.
I should have put down Call of Duty in college and maybe went to class some more. But so Howard, thank you very much for your time. It's been great. I think it had some really good content, stuff that we haven't had before. So we appreciate you very much for taking the time and being on here.
Yeah, and I want to tell the listeners, if they want to stay in touch, they can go to howardmarks.com is my blog, startengine.com is the company, and then I'm at Howard Marks on Twitter.
Perfect. So everyone check him out. Go do your research.
Thanks, guys.
Follow him on Twitter. And thanks for listening, everyone. Take care. Peace out. Tip your waitress.